We're all fed these ideas about what intimacy is supposed to look like, but the reality? It's way more complicated. So let's kick things off with a question that might just challenge everything you think you know.
1 in 4. Let that sink in for a second. That is a huge number that kind of flies in the face of what we're usually told. So what is really going on here? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden reasons behind this statistic, because what it tells us about connection and pleasure is, well, it's pretty profound.
Okay, so a number is one thing, right? But to really get what this intimacy gap feels like, we need to put a human face on it. Let's dive into a story.
Let's meet Alex. And Alex's story, well, it might sound a little too familiar to some of you, because on the outside, he seems to be in a fantastic, loving relationship.
From the outside looking in, everything's perfect. Alex and his partner, they're totally in sync. They share inside jokes, they're each other's biggest cheerleaders, that emotional bond is solid as a rock.
But when things get physical, there's this weird disconnect. It's subtle, you know? It's this nagging feeling that the pleasure isn't really a shared experience. It feels more like a performance, almost like a task to be completed. And that's where this quiet, invisible wall starts to go up between them.
So where does that gap even come from? Well, it's usually built on some very real but often totally unspoken roadblocks to pleasure. Let's dig into what those are.
All right, first up, let's talk about the physical stuff. This is the practical, nuts and bolts side of things. We're talking about basic hygiene, or maybe just physical discomfort, like neck pain from being in an awkward position for too long. Heck, even something as reflexive as a strong gag reflex, which, hey, you can't control, can turn what should be an intimate moment into something super stressful. These are tangible issues that can totally derail the whole experience.
But here's the thing. A lot of the time, the biggest hurdles have nothing to do with the physical side. They're all up here, in our heads and in our hearts. It could be a deep feeling of vulnerability, or a sense that things aren't really reciprocal in the relationship as a whole. Or maybe it's just a lack of real connection in that moment. For some, this can go even deeper, stemming from past trauma, personal phobias, or even cultural baggage. These are those invisible barriers that create that one-sided feeling Alex was dealing with. Okay, so knowing what the problems are is one thing, right? But what really matters is how we fix them. And the great news is there's actually a super clear, actionable playbook to help transform intimacy into something that's genuinely shared.
This whole playbook really comes down to 3 powerful steps, and they all build on each other. It all starts with communication. That leads to mutual comfort, and that opens the door to what we'll call true complicity. Think of this as your roadmap to closing that intimacy gap for good.
All right, step 1, communicate to reassure. This is everything. It's the foundation the whole thing is built on. It's about creating a totally safe space, a judgment-free zone where you can actually talk about those feelings of vulnerability we just mentioned. It's asking simple, caring questions like, what do you actually like, or what makes you feel good and comfortable? That conversation in and of itself is a huge act of intimacy.
Okay, moving on to step 2, prioritize mutual comfort. This is where we tackle those physical roadblocks head on. We're talking about simple fixes like shifting positions so no one gets a neck cramp, or respecting physical limits without making a big deal out of it. It's about having a grown-up conversation about hygiene. When both people feel physically comfortable and safe, that's when the emotional connection really has a chance to shine.
And that brings us to step 3, which is honestly the most vital piece of this whole puzzle: cultivating true complicity. Now, this is way more than just, I do this for you, you do that for me. It's a total mindset shift. The real magic happens when the joy comes from giving joy, you know? It's about sharing a moment together, not performing for each other. It's about appreciating one another and being truly present.
So we've gone through the problem, the reasons, the solution. What does this all boil down to? What's the big takeaway for you and your own relationships?
It really comes down to this one simple but incredibly powerful idea. When pleasure is truly shared, when it's built on that foundation of talking, of comfort, of being in it together, it's not just a physical act anymore. It's like you're turning up the volume on your emotional connection. So I'm going to leave you with this. Knowing this stuff is great, but it's taking action that actually changes things. So after hearing all this today, what's the first conversation you're going to have to start building that deeper, more mutual connection?